When looking at liberty, we often look at a very Americanized point of view. We think of the Constitution, we think of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, something that is granted to us as a right, and something that we must demand in the United States. Um, but liberty is something more vague than that, more general. In my belief, it is my belief that liberty is the freedom to act. Um, it's not the freedom to act with no consequence. That is once again a idea that Hume and Mills had, where they discussed that righteousness and morality and ethics must play a part in keeping a society at bay and for the betterment of the society, and to continue growing and to continue thriving and not be overthrown, we must look at distributive justice. Distributive justice is to say, for an example, we have corporate CEOs and people sitting on the top of the ladder. Does their money and their resources affect where they sit, and how much power do they hold over a society as a whole, and what kind of power do they hold because of property? We think of the Constitution, and the Constitution only primarily covered in the beginning white men who owned property. It later became a thing about how it was just white men, and we've seen it expand throughout the years, and it's included more and more people. But when we pick apart distributive justice, who's in the right to say who is in charge of whether somebody's power is not earned, whether the respect for that person is not held in the society, and whether or not the society is unbalanced because of the lack of distributive justice. We can look at the insurrection and how we talk about the liberty to do something, but there was a consequence. We are starting to see these trials come out. When do we decide that distributive justice is worthy of consequences? Is when we decide that it is no longer a problem that is affecting a sole person. It is a problem that is affecting a large majority. But in order for a government to thrive, it is also said that we can start to look at how distributive justice affects those at the bottom. And I'm not referring to the bottom of the pyramid in this case as the poor, but I'm referring to it as the minority. When we look at the minority, no society will be able to sit peacefully with ignoring its minority. Whether that be an opinion or political correctness, we can start to see that for distributive justice to best be obtained, it needs to play a part in the righteousness and moral ethics of all those involved, whether or not that opinion is wanted by the society or not. When we look at ethics and morality, that in itself is a sticky subject, because a lot of them come from very personal experiences, as we discussed at the beginning of this class. So to me, liberty is best defined as the freedom to act, the freedom to have the ability to act, whether you choose to or not, that is on you. The ability, but either choice is liberty. We can look at liberty as the train track problem. If you choose not to make a decision, someone dies either way. If you do choose, you're guilty of choosing one over another. We look at distributive justice the same. Are you choosing to sit back and not watch, not ignore that property might equate power, or are you going to address the fact that there's power to the property? We can see it in nature as well. We look at abiotic factors like sunlight, water, and food sources and energy cycles. In nature in itself, we can start to see that we need resource partitioning, and for them to be divided up a certain way, and it becomes a competition over what the ability for them to act. And we see fluxes with populations because they have this ability to act according to their need. We can think of it in war. In order to have a sense of justice, there has to be the idea that justice is able to be lost and thrown away when going into a war. It comes down to what morality and what is ethically correct when it comes to self-preservation, because at the end of the day, every human thinks of self-preservation. Distributive justice is a way to throw out that human instinct, that Homo sapien instinct, to be exact, that in a way you are naturally meant to be selfish, but how do you stop a whole society from being selfish and have a mutual respect for others and to embrace their selflessness? So liberty, although, is the freedom to act according to however you please, distributive justice comes to put a foot down and say you will act according to however you want unless it starts to impede on somebody else's liberty.